The privatization of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's video. We're going to talk about something that's been in the news in the past few weeks and months, and it's the potential privatization of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So, what would this mean for the markets, the mortgage markets, and the housing markets in general? But also, what is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac? What do they do? What function do they serve? Most people have heard of Fannie Mae, but I guarantee you very few could actually tell you exactly what they do and the function that they serve. So we're going to take a little step back and talk about exactly what these entities do and then go into what it could mean as privatized entities. So let's dive into it. The first thing is, what is a government-sponsored enterprise? So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are government-sponsored enterprises. As the name suggests, they're government-sponsored. I like to think of them as quasi-government, privately owned enterprises. So while the government does sponsor them, they do have private shareholders. And in fact, Fannie Mae is it's publicly traded. So you can actually buy the stock of Fannie Mae. And here are a list of the other GSEs that are pretty common. You got Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie Mae, Sallie Mae, Farmer Mac. They all serve pretty much the same purpose, just different types of products. So, for instance, Sallie Mae does student housing. Farmer Mac is obviously to do with farmland, but they also serve the same purpose. We're going to refer to Fannie Mae since Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are the most prominent as far as residential housing goes, and by far the biggest of these entities, especially Fannie Mae. So it is a secondary mortgage market. What this means is that they do not actually originate loans. They are a secondary market where they actually buy up individual loans from lenders who have already originated loans. And so what they do, they might say, hey, Mr. Community Bank, so you've got a bunch of loans. I'd like to buy them from you. So they buy up all the loans and then they package them into one big security, and then they sell that security. So they can sell it as stocks, they could sell it, as other products. But that is what a secondary mortgage market is. And so you can never go to a Fannie Mae office and say, "Hey, I want a loan." It doesn't work like that. They only deal in the secondary market. So what function do they serve? Why do we need this secondary market? It brings liquidity to the mortgage industry. Now, the best way I like to describe this is, imagine you're a community bank, a local community bank. You have $100 million of capital to lend specifically for real estate. And now, just for the purpose of the example, let's say that the average loan size is 500K. So you lend out, you find home buyers, you do your advertising, you end up lending out the whole 100 million to about 200 home buyers. So you got 200 mortgages. Now, if there wasn't a secondary market to sell those mortgages to, you'd kind of be stuck. You'd say, all right, I've lent out my 100 mil. I've got to either wait for a homeowner to either refinance or until, the 30 years on their mortgage comes to an end and they've paid it all down. So obviously that's not very feasible, especially if you are a small bank. So what these banks do, these local community banks and other lenders, they will wrap these loans up and they'll actually sell them individually to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who will package them as a security and then sell them off. So what you actually get here is the more competition to the market. Instead of all these smaller lenders being tapped out of capital, more capital is being brought to the market. They can continue lending, and the lenders can make origination fees by just doing more and more loans and then selling them off. Now, of course, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac aren't just going to buy any loan. They have to meet certain criteria. The borrower has to have a certain credit score. They have to have certain income. There has to be all these parameters that need to be met. And so the originating lender will make sure that the borrower has all these criteria so that they can actually sell that mortgage off to Fannie Mae and it will be accepted. If it wouldn't be accepted, then they're going to have to keep that loan on their books until they could sell it to someone else, or they would just have to not be able to use that capital until it gets refinanced or the loan matures. So that liquidity is very important and actually brings a lot of options and competitiveness to the market instead of all these lenders being tapped out of capital. Second thing it does, it makes mortgages more affordable and the whole housing market more stable. So the mortgages are more affordable, mainly because Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they weren't introduced necessarily to make money. Now they are private, they do have private shareholders, so they do have to be profitable. Otherwise, the investors, they wouldn't be taking care of the investors. But their original purpose was to make housing more affordable, to bring stability to the market. So typically, you're going to get the best priced loans that are made to be sold off to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So that whether it's multifamily or residential, usually the lowest rate loans are going to be ones that are bought up by these entities. So that means that a large portion of the loans originated are going to be made for these entities, and it's going to be lower than anything that the private market can offer. And again, if they were purely profit driven, it might be a little bit more expensive, but their aim is just to provide liquidity to the mortgage markets. So what would privatization of these GSEs change? What would it actually mean if Fannie Mae became privatized? Well, no one really knows the exact answer, and there's so many different variables and implications that could play out. One of my beliefs is that mortgages in the short term would get more expensive. So you could think of, a Fannie Mae just becoming a regular CMBS. And I know we haven't talked about CMBS. It's a commercial mortgage-backed security. So it's effectively the same thing as a Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, except they're private. So they only answer to shareholders and they're purely there to make a profit. So if you privatized Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they would pretty much just become another MBS or CMBS. And that could, that could mean that the mortgage rates are higher. These CMBS loans are typically a little bit higher, not a crazy amount, but they're definitely not quite as cheap as the Fannie Mae loans. What this could mean, though, in the longer term is that you might get an actual increase in competition in the private market. So if you think about it, like I said before, a lot of loans that are done on homes these days are made for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Because they are by far the lowest interest rate, it means that there's going to be a lot of loans that are now freed up that are there for the taking. So you could actually see a lot more players come into the industry from the private market who's going to take up all of this market share. So how quickly or how slowly that plays out remains to be seen, but it could actually be a net positive in the future. And maybe that's what the people in charge of making this decision are looking toward, is saying, hey, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have become this big bureaucratic, inefficient machine. Maybe it's time to open it up to the private markets and allow the natural forces, economic forces, dictate what the lending criteria should be. So we'll see how this plays out over the next weeks and months, whether this privatization comes to fruition. Some are out there saying that it's almost a guaranteed thing, and whether the effects, how much the effects will impact the overall housing industry remain to be seen. How quickly they'll affect it will remain to be seen. But it's something definitely to keep your eye out. Not a ton of people are talking about this, but it will become more of an issue as it gets closer to being a certain thing. So thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'd love to hear as well if you have any other topics you'd like me to go over in the next videos. Thanks a lot.